judges. And may our deepest trust ever be in thee, the Lord of our nations, the King of kings, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Together we say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the fellowship of the Holy Ghost be with us all, now and forevermore. Amen.
I make address it prayer one day, sir. I make you say personal this way.
The Senate is in session.
Messages from His Excellency, the President. Announcements by Your Honor.
Before getting into the more everyday announcements, I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the Honorable Senate to congratulate our new President, Lieutenant Colonel the Most Honorable Jeffrey Davidson Bostic, of His Excellency, the President of Barbados. His ascension to the highest office in the land as our head of state is a matter of which we are justly proud. His record of service is exemplary, and we certainly look forward to that continuation of commitment to the development of this country from his new position as our head of state. The Honorable, His Excellency, the President, or the President of our country, is really part and parcel of our Parliament. Parliament is the head of state, the Honorable the Senate, and the House of Assembly. And we look forward in due course, then perhaps we will have the pleasure of having His Excellency deliver a state address from these hallowed halls, as is part and parcel of the tradition of that of a head of state. So congratulations. I take this opportunity as well, on behalf of the Honorable Senate, to extend our profound gratitude for the outstanding service rendered by Madam President, Her Excellency Dame Sandra Mason, who not only served for 8 years as our Governor General and did that with distinction, but had the honor of being our first president and served with distinction for 4 years. And before that, of course, a long record of service in the judiciary, in the wider public service, as well as in the international arena on behalf of this country. We, members of the Senate, had the wonderful opportunity to interact with Dame Sandra on many occasions, and as usual, she epitomized Barbadian grace, was also epitomizing Barbadian intellect, practicality, and commitment to the development of this country. I think we're all the better for Dame Sandra's service, especially being the first president, first head of state of native head of state of Barbados, and helping to define that role. I believe everyone will agree that Her Excellency has set a suitable bar for the role, and it's really for all successors in the future to match that high standard which has been set. So on behalf of the Honorable Senate, I say congratulations to our new head of state, and thank you for excellent service rendered to our outgoing head of state. By way of other announcements, we do have minutes of our meeting held on Wednesday, 29th October 2025 for confirmation. Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I'd like to move the confirmation of the minutes of our meeting held on Wednesday, October 29th, 2025.
The question is that the minutes of our meeting held on 29th October 2025 be confirmed. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Those minutes are confirmed. In relation to our minutes of Wednesday, 19th of November 2025, to be deferred. Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I'd like to move the deferral of the minutes of our meeting held on Wednesday, the 19th of October, 2025.
The question is that the minutes of our meeting held on November 19th, 2025 be deferred. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye?
Aye.
Those against please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Those minutes are deferred. We have apologies for absence from Senator Roshana Trim and Senator Andrew Malilu, both of whom are overseas. We have indications of late arrival from Senator Canon Dr. John Rogers. By way of congratulations, there's our members here. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate our members of this chamber for recognition during the Independence Honors of this year. Senator, the Honorable Christopher Maynard, Order of the Republic, has been suitably recognized for his contribution to medicine, especially as one of Barbados' foremost ear, nose, and throat specialists, and as well as his philanthropic work, including, as noted in the record, has talked about his business, several bouts of pro bono work, also known as free work for suitable cases. Please do not bombard the Honorable Senator Maynard. This service is not free to senators. They can afford to pay. It's for those who are indeed. But in all seriousness, I have the honor of being in school with Senator Maynard, and he is as much the same now as he was then, in terms of his calmness, his manner, his affability, as well as his brilliance. I was in school with him then, but if he was at school during the term, I went into vacation in terms of the level of our intellect and ability. But in all seriousness, I want to congratulate Senator Maynard on justly deserved honor. Also honored as well in that Independence Awards, our dear Senator Lisa Cummins, Leader of Government Business in the Senate, for her outstanding work in relation to economic substance and the OECD tax matters, which was a list and a situation as critically important for our economy as were other lists and thresholds that we had to scale. And the team which was involved in that matter was recognized with the Gold Award of Achievement, and Senator Cummins, as leader of the team, was included in that. Congratulations to you, Senator Cummins. We know your appetite for hard work and your capacity to deliver, and we are thankful that your many sleepless nights and your hard-working days have put us in such a happy position as to have reformed the economy suitably. Also recognized in the Independence Awards was our own Reverend Wayne Curtin, our chaplain. He was awarded the Barbados Service Medal, especially for his work in the community. As you know, he's a proud man of the city, and his work in the city at large, but especially the areas around the St. Mary's Church, long before he was a man of the cloth, and well being a man of the cloth. He does much work around Barbados, but generally you cannot take the city out of Reverend Wayne Curtin, and so he was suitably recognized for the excellent work in the community. So I want to say congratulations to the honorable senators on their preferment. Senator Warren.
Mr. President, I wish to join you in the congratulations. I'm doing it this way because obviously the leader of government business was one of those persons honored, so she cannot, I would take the opportunity to start the process in terms of congratulating those persons who were honored and include yourself, Mr. President, as you two received an award for your work on the committee, and also to congratulate the Honorable Senator Maynard for his being recognized for the outstanding work which he has done as a medical doctor, and he is definitely someone who is deserving of the award, the Order of the Republic of Barbados, and to all of those persons who were awarded, and also to join in congratulations to His Excellency the President Bostic. I do believe that from his presentation at Kensington and his initiatives as outlined, that he will also blaze a trail and be recognized in years to come as being one of those outstanding presidents of Barbados. I believe that the Republic is off to a good start. We have had an excellent president in Dame Sandra Mason, the Most Honorable Dame Sandra Mason, who handled the office, and she basically, every single Barbadian is proud of her. Every single Barbadian looked up to her. Every single Barbadian felt pleased and honored to have her as the first president of the Republic. So she set the bar high, and I'm certain that every single president that will come after will look to achieve the same standards of which she have met, and to keep the elegance of Barbados and the office of the president at such a high and noble level. So as a republic, we are off to a good start. And from this chamber, we also have some shining stars in terms, those of honored here, the Honorable Senator Maynard, the leader of government business, Senator Cummins, you, Mr. President, the Most Honorable, and also our chaplain as well. So the decorations are slowly going around the table. So I just want to join in the congratulations to all those persons honored, and also to our former president and our new president. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Warren. Senator Kevin Boyce.
Thank you for the recognition, Mr. President. I too join in rising to have it officially recorded on behalf of the, let's call it the independent caucuses under section 36.4. Sir, what struck me as particularly significant was the symbolic yet important interaction between the outgoing president and the incoming president. And I think that we as a Senate chamber and as a nation express our sincere gratitude for the job done by Dame Sandra. We express our sincere optimism and hope for the job to be done by the current president, Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Bostic, the Most Honorable. And it shows that even though we are new and nascent in the concept of republicanism, we are able to do things in a manner which assures the public that while there may be thoughts or skeptics, that we are determined to get it right. Now, symbolism only goes so far, and we will have opportunity to examine how it actually works. But I think it's clear that we're off to a proper start. In relation to the contributions and the awards made by the members of this chamber, It goes without saying that it is a thankless task, all those who serve in public office. Despite what may be stated, it is hard, it is unrewarded. So personally, I would like to extend my congratulations to you, my congratulations to Senator Cummings, and my congratulations to Senator Maynard, as well as to our chaplain. It is a thankless task, politics, and these tokens of recognition go a small way into acknowledging the sacrifices made. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Watson. Senator Nichols.
Mr. President, let me join from this government side in lending my voice to the congratulations to all those concerned. I start with no less a person than the President Emeritus, the Most Honorable Dame Sandra Mason, who served this country with distinction, with grace, and with love. She will be remembered for the manner in which she brought an urbaneness, despite her rural background, to the task at hand. Dignity was the hallmark of her expressions and how she carried herself, and Barbadians will long remember her tenure as a successful one. I want to say on behalf of the government side that we are very appreciative of the manner in which she has executed the work associated with that high office. And we wish her well in her future endeavors. She would always be treasured in our hearts. I would also want to formally congratulate from this side the Most Honorable Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Davison Bostic, whose rise to the highest office of our land will typify the example for all to follow, that your humbleness of station, that your circumstances of birth can never determine your destination. He is, like his predecessor, the very best of what Barbados has to offer. He is our president, and we pledge our support to make his sojourn and his time in this office as members of the Senate a successful one, and we look forward to his work he's begun by giving us a challenge, and we hope that we can do everything to assist in making his vision something that is realizable. Sir, you have served this country for many years. The office of President of the Senate is your current destination. But those of us who know you well will know that you serve in several offices in your profession, in your avocation, even in your pastime and your hobbies and other civic organizations to which you are a member. You do it with a level, sir, of commendable enthusiasm and energy. I'm in a number of these organizations with you, and I know that your night tonight will end in the wee hours of the morning, where you have other duties to execute on behalf of a large amount of people. And that too, again, tells us that your work in the task force and in representing the interests of government brought that continuity, because you served as a Minister of International Business in the previous administration, and your leadership and foresight has been given to the country yet again, and we are thankful for that. I'm happy that you have been recognized. To the leader of government business, my schoolmate, she continues to show us what hard work and dedication means. She leads from the front. Yes, she is a hard taskmaster. Yes, she is very attentive to details and really requires a high level of discipline and commitment from this parliamentary team in the Senate. I am happy that she has been formally recognized for her work and her leadership in that regard, and may her work in civic life and in public life in Barbados long continue. I have to say a word, Mr. President, to my own daughter, Mr. Christopher Maynard. and I can tell you that I am a recipient of his benevolence. Long may that association continue. I always take the time and tenor and tone of our debates from his attitude and his posture, and certainly his insightful analyses and contributions to our debates have flourished the contribution that the nation has been presented with. Congratulations to you, my brother, my friend, colleague, on your preferment, and it is an acknowledgement of the country of your service. To our chaplain, who is not here today, I want to thank him first for giving me the opportunity to say the prayers on his behalf, but nevertheless, his work in the city communities in Barbados and as service at the St. John the Baptist Church, which was acknowledged as part of the reason why he received the National Independence Awards, but his service there too is well known, and I want to congratulate our chaplain on his preferment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Nichols. Senator the Honorable Christopher Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm struggling to decide which to respond to first, Mr. President. Mr. President, I thank all of my fellow senators for the kind words, and I thank you as President in particular. I believe, sir, that our old headmaster, now deceased, if he could only see what has happened to his pupils, would be very happy. He would be very happy. Mr. President, I received my award on behalf of course, of myself, but also on behalf of my family who've tolerated me for all the time, and my friends, and my colleagues. But more importantly, I believe my teachers. And there are some of our teachers that are still alive, and I'm sure that they were very happy to see, first of all, you, and then myself receive honors. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Maynard. Please proceed with the order paper.
Presentation of petitions, presentation of papers, reports from select committees, questions to ministers, request for leave to move the adjournment of the Senate on matters of urgent public importance, statements by ministers or parliamentary secretaries, personal explanations, motions relating to the business or sitting of the Senate and moved by a minister, introduction of bills, public business.
Public business is now the order of the day.
I beg your pardon, sir. Maybe revert to introduction of bills.
Certainly. Introduction of bills.
Order, move the first reading of orders number 10 and 11.
Senator Cummings.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the following bills be read a first time. I beg to move the first reading of the Constitution Amendment Bill of 2025 and the first reading of the Parliament Miscellaneous Provisions Bill of 2025.
The question is that those bills, the Constitution Amendment Bill 2025, the Parliament Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2025, be read a first time. Will those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. The thanks, the ayes have it. Those bills are accordingly read a third time. That's first time, sorry.
Sure. Public business. Order is number 7, sir. Order number 7, naming the Honorable Leader of the Senate to move the second reading of the Tourism Accommodation Bill 2025.
Senator Cummings.
Mr. President, this bill has already been debated and passed in the other place, and we have heard subsequent to that a number of associations, including those with responsibility for the Airbnb sector, shared accommodation sector specifically, and those even in the villa segment, including some of those who sit in this honorable chamber, Mr. President. And so in treating to this particular matter, we have had a number of consultations being led by the Honorable Minister of Tourism, who sits in the other place, and those consultations continue at the level of the ministry. That notwithstanding, however, Mr. President, in the interest of allowing for there to be a formal engagement to allow for comments to come in officially, having passed the other place, this bill is to be committed, therefore, Mr. President, to the Standing Committee on Economic and Productive Sectors for further consultations and to invite for public consultation. And I beg to move that this bill is sent to the committee at this stage.
The question is that this bill, the Tourism Sector Combination Bill, be referred to the Standing Committee on Economic and Productive Sectors. For those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. The thanks, the ayes have it.
Order number 8, in the name of the Honorable Leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Barbados Tourism Product Authority Repeal, Transfer of Assets and Liabilities Bill 2025.
Senator Cummings.
Mr. President, in the same vein, these matters were done as a cognate debate in the other place, and so on that basis, they will be treated, proposal is for them to be treated in similar fashion at the level of the Committee on Economic and Productive Sectors. I beg to move that this be sent to the committee at this time.
The question is that the Barbados Tourism Product Authority Repeal, Transfer of Assets and Liabilities Bill 2025 be referred to the Standing Committee on Economic and Productive Sectors. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. The thanks, the ayes have it. This bill is therefore referred to the Joint Standing Committee on Economic and Productive Sectors.
With respect to both those bills, sir, the relevant message produced for your signature to go to the other place during the course of the day. Order number 4, sir. Name of the Honorable Leader of the Senate to move the passing of a resolution that Parliament of Barbados take note of the 2023 to 2028 National Policy on Aging.
Senator Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, as I rise properly now for the first time to give a speech presentation, I too want to join my colleagues in offering congratulations to our new president and our new president emeritus. Our new president emeritus was our very first president, as was said by one of our other members, and served Barbados with grace and distinction. Pardon? And so now, as she takes on a new emerita, I'm being told that that is the correct term, and so all of us will remember it going forward. And so, thank you very much. And so, having served Barbados with a level of distinction and grace and class in her service as first Governor General and then as the first President of Barbados, we wish her well in her new role as Madam President in a past tense. And we equally, Mr. President, I certainly want to offer my congratulations to our new president. I first met His Excellency, the Most Honorable Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Bostic, when I served in Washington as first secretary. I was first secretary in our embassy in Washington, D.C., and he was our defense attaché. Our offices were side by side. And so that was my first encounter with him. And he has remained an officer and a gentleman and now a statesman in whom I am so proud and I'm very well pleased. And I wish him all the very best. I too also want to lend my voice in congratulations to the members of this honorable chamber who have been awarded, and to thank those of you who have acknowledged my team and I for our work. Now, my team and I, we work very closely together with the Attorney General's team, and that which includes our own president. They on the side of anti-money laundering and terrorist financing and the Financial Action Task Force, and my team on the compliance, economic substance, and OECD blacklisting matters. And they collide more often than not in the same spaces. And I want to commend all of the team members, including those who don't sit in this chamber and who ordinarily would never be seen, but it is a recognition that sometimes we lead teams that are often invisible, but their work is significant. And I want to take the opportunity to recognize the members of the International Business Unit and all of the agencies that constitute the Financial Action Task Force team led by the Honorable Attorney General, including His Honor, our President. I want to thank also Senator Maynard for his outstanding service for which he was recognized this weekend. He is very much one of the foremost voices on medicine in this chamber, who speaks on any matters relating to health and health services, and he is in his own right an accomplished ENT specialist and an accomplished medical practitioner, and I am happy to share space with you, Senator Maynard. And equally so, in the absence of our chamber, our chaplain, who is not here, I want to congratulate him on his award. Now, as I stand here today, all of the persons that we have just spoken about fall within a certain category where they have spent some time giving their lives to service to our nation. And I stand here today to speak about those in a different category who have also given their life in service to our nation in a different way, our aged, our elderly. And so as I go into this policy on aging, I want to acknowledge them as well for having served our nation well, for having been this nation's nation builders, for having been those on whose shoulders many of us now stand. Much like Senator Maynard's teachers, I remember being a young girl at the St. Michael's School, and one of my teachers said, I would grow up to be a terrorist. I never forgot that. Not sure why she thought that day, but I think I had scribbled something on a... I think that many of our teachers will be very stunned to see both Senator Nichols and I in our respective professional spheres. But just like you, Senator Maynard, and you, Mr. President, I think many of our teachers are happy that we didn't become what they thought we were. But, Mr. President, I think that as we discuss today and we debate this national policy on aging, the point that this particular policy is attempting to rationalize is how we see our elderly in our society. We talk about, as a country, the village that raised us, and we heard that certainly in the People's President's very first speech out of the bat, the people whose shoulders he stood on. And equally so, there are all of us, I am sure, who can identify the people who whose shoulders we stood on. For me, it was Granny Holder and these other, there were always people in our community who looked out for us. So as I rise to speak today on this 2023-2028 National Policy on Aging, this is a document that goes, in this context, far beyond social policy. It goes far beyond policy even, but it is at its core who we are as a people. It is a statement about who we are, yes, the values that we have held, the kind of Barbados we want to build for generations still to come, and the kind of Barbados that we have inherited from those who have gone before, Mr. President. What we are also looking at simultaneously, Mr. President, is a Barbados for the future, not in 2 decades, but a Barbados for today. And why do I say that, Mr. President? For the very first time in our history, and we've talked about that here in this honorable chamber in many incarnations, but we are an aged society. There are persons we are dying, we are living, we're not reproducing as fast as our birth rate has exceeded our birth rate has exceeded, I'm going to come back to that, Mr. President. So we have a country where, I don't think I've had enough coffee yet for the morning, I probably haven't had any at all, but a country where, Mr. President, the proportion of older persons in this nation has grown so significantly. It really has. And it now shapes every sector of our national development. It tells us how we should design communities, how we should write policy, how we should structure families. It tells us about the way that we should prepare for natural disasters. Mr. President, as we look at what happened in Jamaica a few weeks ago, now not even months yet, we think about what could possibly have been the fate of those older persons in the community. I certainly saw on social media one woman, an older woman in a wheelchair, couldn't move, but she lived in a house with a slat roof. And when those persons in her community around her, their houses were blown away by the winds or they were taken over by the floods, 30 people were able to shelter in this woman's 1-bedroom house until the storm passed. She was a grandmother in that community. Even how we respond to disasters and how we how we live in our communities, our elderly are an essential part of that conversation. So now, this policy, captured at order number 4, is effectively translating that reality into a lived policy document. It does so with clarity, with ambition, but it also does so with honesty. And as I get into the actual weeds of what is captured in the policy, I want to be able to share what the policy intends to do, why it is necessary, and what the government has done so far. It is estimated, Mr. President, that by 2050, 1 in every 5 Barbadians will be over the age of 65. By 2050, 1 in every 5 Barbadians will be over the age of 65. Our fertility rate has fallen. Many of us, including many of us in this chamber, have between 1 and 1.5 children. That's the average for most families. I certainly have 1. Our working age population is shrinking. Our life expectancy continues to increase. We came here, Mr. President, and we talked about the reform of the National Insurance Scheme, because as people lived longer and they got older, they were drawing on the National Insurance Scheme for a much longer time than in previous generations. And so with these shifts came pressures on a couple of things: pensions, long-term care, chronic disease management, labor market participation, and the design of public services. Mr. President, I remember being at an awards one year when we were celebrating International Women's Day, I believe it was, and we were celebrating a woman who was 75 years old and she was still working. And I remember being caught in my mind trying to figure out, am I really comfortable with the idea of celebrating a woman at 75? She was working in the private sector, working at 75, because does that say to me that she has a need to keep working because there's no support system, either by family or that her workplace has not created a lifeline for her? Am I really comfortable celebrating 75? And she was struggling at the time, Mr. President. So we have to be able to have systems in place that allow for pensions and labor market participation, especially for our elderly, and how our public services are designed. So we can see the evidence of aging, the fact that Barbadians are living longer, healthier lives, The challenge for us is how to translate that into policy and into planning. So in the first instance, Mr. President, we have a population policy. This government took the question of population into full account in the first term of its office, and it began the heavy lifting of developing a population policy. A couple of things that the population policy found: a shrinking labor pool, increased old age dependency, greater strain on social protection systems, and the need for policy innovation to maintain economic vitality. The policy on aging then directly responds to the findings of the population policy because government is joined up. Government can't be developing policies on one hand here, on one hand there, but they're not talking to each other. So coherent implementation is a key feature of government policy. And so the population policy found expression in the aging policy. And the first thing that the policy on aging did to respond to this reality is to identify what kinds of operational frameworks needed to be put in place to respond to this operational skill shift. It identified that longer life expectancy meant that more years of chronic disease management was needed. More years of mobility support was needed, that there was a greater need for long-term care, that there was a greater responsibility on families and the state to plan for older adulthood. Equally, in the population policy, they called for talent retention, skilled migration, diaspora engagement, workforce renewal, and support for older migrants within the care system. So the aging policy then attempted to make sure that there were correlations. And what did it do? It supported the national population goals by doing a few things: encouraging older person participation within parameters, of course, in the labor market, reducing dependency through active aging, protecting the rights of seniors and the welfare of seniors, strengthening systems that will support today's youth when they themselves grow old, and I'll come back to that in a little bit. But also the question of creating intergenerational cohesion. By aligning, Mr. President, our aging policy with our population policy, we're preparing Barbados not just to survive the demographic shifting that we're experiencing, but to be able to thrive and to have our people thrive in spite of it. So what did this population policy then, not this aging policy, then translate into? There are 8 thematic pillars that are captured in this document seen at order number 4. First pillar is financial and economic security, social security, health and social services, the physical and the built environment, the social environment, legislation and rights protection, long-term care, and then here is one of the ones that I spoke about earlier, but we certainly can all agree on: pandemics, disasters, and emergency situations. What do we do for the elderly in these scenarios? This, Mr. President, is the most comprehensive aging framework that has ever been adopted in Barbados, but it is not to say that work on aging has not always been done. And I took a moment, Mr. President, to look back, not 5 years, not 7 years, but over the course of 10 years or so, to look at what the frameworks were for Barbados on aging. And I found a couple of things. I'll come to those in a moment. But the policy, as it stands now before us, creates a number of shifts. The first shift, Mr. President, is from passive welfare to a rights-based approach. Older persons are recognized not as dependents, but as citizens with rights, agency, and voice. That's the first shift that this policy captures. The second shift is from fragmented interventions, as have always existed in different parts of the government system. You may have support coming from the welfare department, support coming from the social agency, support coming from NIS, support coming from the Prime Minister's office, support coming from the Ministry of Health, and they have all been fragmented approaches catering to one specific demographic group. This particular policy, by codifying everything in one place, shows that we are translating from fragmented interventions to coordinated national systems. So aging is no longer the domain of one single ministry, it is an all of government ministry with a coherent policy for all to follow. Shift 3 is from aging as a burden to aging as a growth opportunity. A few years ago, one of the colleagues approached me on the business side of the ministry to say, Lisa, do you know that there is a silver economy? So we've always talked about the blue economy, the green economy, the orange economy, and there's a silver economy. And their rationale was that Barbados, as an aging society, needed to be able to create a framework for a silver economy. And so that silver economy is captured in this policy. The silver economy embraces and acknowledges the economic power, expertise, and entrepreneurial potential of older adults. This week, Tuesday, Mr. President, one of my team members retired. She is one of my most amusing team members, and we had a special send-off for her as she left. We organized for a limo to come and pick her up from home and bring her to work. When she arrived at the ministry, all of the staff was standing outside waiting for her and creating a guard of honor for her to come in, and she was so overwhelmed, she was in tears. But one of the things that I said to her in my speechifying that morning was that there is so much value in persons who have the institutional knowledge of our system. They have worked in the system, they understand the mechanics of government, and we as a country need to find a way to tap into that institutional knowledge. And I said to her, once a member of this team, I need you to always understand that you are always a member of this team and that you have a place to always come and mentor those who come behind you, the younger ones, and to be able to share your knowledge, your skill, and your expertise. And that really, Mr. President, has to be a central feature of how we create that silver economy, bringing and utilizing the skills of those who have served our nation well, our institutions well, and bringing them back, even post-retirement, into the system to support the transfer of knowledge, skills, and expertise. The fourth and the final shift, Mr. President, is from informal caregiving to structured long-term care. Families, Mr. President, we have a challenge in this country. And every year, especially at this time of year, you hear our health officials talking about that challenge. Senator Maynard would know it better than most of us. But we see many families taking their elderly family members to the hospital and leaving them there. And I don't want to raise my hands in judgment to that. I just know that I cannot imagine the idea that the person who raised me, who cared for me, who took care of me, who sacrificed for me, that when I am capable, even if it is hard, that I am just going to take that person and abandon them when they're unable to help themselves and leave them in a hospital. Because when I, as a young person, couldn't do for myself, they did for me. I don't understand the idea of dumping our elderly in an institution and never looking back at them. I most definitely also don't understand the idea of dumping our elderly while still simultaneously happily taking the benefits that are assigned to them by way of their pension checks and their support services. I don't understand that. But while I find that behavior deeply problematic and heartless, I also, Mr. President, am very clear that there may very well be those persons who are caregivers who just don't know where to turn for help, who themselves are struggling and don't know where to turn to get help for themselves, and they feel as though that is the safest place for their elderly, no matter how misguided it may be. But the idea of there being the need for a structured long-term care facility is a central part of this policy. That, Mr. President, is why when we drive down the highway and we get to the Hubbersville roundabout, just there at Waterford, you see a brand new spanking building yet to be opened as a brand new geriatric hospital, a new state-of-the-art geriatric hospital. Is that an invitation for us to dump our family members in care? No, but it is a structured approach to long-term care as is captured in this shift in this policy on aging, where our elderly can be provided for and cared for in dignity with a structured format around it. And so this policy aligns us with that global best practice and positions Barbados to manage the demographic and the social shifts that we are experiencing in caring for our elderly. Now, I took the time in preparing for today to see what other countries have done, because you always hear about what other countries have done, and obviously Barbados has to develop that which is fit for purpose for us in our circumstances. And so in the case of some of the countries that I've seen, other countries equally grappling with the question of an aging population have taken a number of steps. Like us, Japan, a developed economy with $1 trillion economy, they have developed a national long-term care insurance system. In Germany, they have made long-term care a formal pillar of their social security infrastructure. In Singapore, they redesigned communities under their successful aging plan. In Costa Rica, closer to home, they invested in a community-based care network funded partly through earmarked taxation. And in Canada, just up to the north, they strengthened elder rights protections and aged elderly cities as national priorities. So different countries took different approaches based on their way forward. Barbados now is in the process of devising what that structured care looks like. Equally, Mr. President, under the Ministry of Health, I've spoken about the geriatric hospital already in Waterford, but we've seen the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs speak about breaking ground at Stirling in St. Philip in the east of the island for there to be a dedicated facility equally for long-term care for the elderly. And so there are facilities that are expected to be rolled out across the country under the Ministry with Responsibility for People Empowerment, alongside those that have been already developed by the Ministry with Responsibility for Health, to have that structured approach to long-term care. And perhaps equally so, there's already a growing number of private long-term care facilities, and we expect that even more of that will evolve as our communities continue to age. Now, across the Caribbean, a little closer to home, we have Jamaica. Jamaica modernized its national policy for senior citizens and aligned it with its vision for 2030. Trinidad and Tobago established a division for aging and oversight for residential care. Anguilla developed our national residential care standards so that from place to place, from residential care facility to residential care facility, there were standards of service that needed to be met. So, Mr. President, Barbados' policy effectively reflects what we have seen in both the regional and the international frameworks, where several areas across the silver economy, including emergency preparedness, but also, Mr. President, in the long-term care, that Barbados is, in fact, not just keeping pace in this space, but we are leading in some instances. Now, over the last 10 years, and I did say that I was going to come back to that, so I'm there now. This is a policy that builds on what Barbados has done over the course of about 10 years. And I only had the time to go back 10 years, Mr. President, but if I had more time, I probably would have gone even further back. But over the course of 10 years, Barbados has maintained a home health program. We know what that program looks like. We have expanded that in recent years. During the pandemic and then after the pandemic, it was expanded and further professionalized. Currently, we have 600 home health workers that have recently been trained to upgrade the service quality to our elderly across our communities. Equally, Mr. President, they have built the alternative care of the elderly program, and government now subsidizes the care for older persons in private residential facilities, and the plans, as I mentioned before, are underway for model residential and respite facilities, and at the community level, expanding community long-term care. Mr. President, I don't know the last day I went into a post office. I have not gone into the post office in eons, Mr. President, but trust and believe that many days around the time of pensions, you can pass by any post office in this country and you will see the long lines of persons who are gathered there. You had better believe that they're not there for the purpose of cashing the pension check, even though they're there for that purpose. They're there for community. They're there because that's what they've always been doing, and that's where they get out of their house. Besides church and going to church on Sundays or Saturdays, as the case may be, and interacting with their community, their social activity guaranteed. One of them is going to the post office to cash that pension check so that they can see the same people who they've seen for a long period of time. That's why many of them go to do that, and they have resisted the other alternatives that may apparently, for those of us who are younger, make life easier. But that's part of the community agenda, and it's important that we give our seniors the ability to have that community immersion. We've heard from the minister in the other place about the work being done with the Barbados Association of Retired Persons, and I want to commend them for continuing to innovate. We've also heard about the work being done in partnership with the Seroptimus International, Seroptimus particularly in the seniors village that they have been building, and that work is continuing. So community matters, Mr. President. Then we've seen the National Senior Games and the network of seniors recreational activity centers across the country to promote wellness, activity, and social connection. These are all critical and core components of active aging. Protecting rights and preparing legislation. Now, this is the draft policy. The policy is to be accompanied by legislation that implements the shifts and the pillars that are captured in this policy, Mr. President. I am told that the draft bill is with the Office of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel and will come to this honorable chamber in due course. But draft elder protection legislation is currently under development and in an advanced state of readiness. We have maintained free bus fares and continue to have the intention of, at all times, providing for that for our seniors. The Tap and Go free bus program for persons over 65 years of age allows for enhanced independence, mobility, and access to essential services. Strengthening the evidence and governance-based frameworks, the government has relaunched the National Committee on Aging and recently held a national conversation on aging and conducted a situational assessment on elder services. These efforts then in turn informed the policy and will continue to inform the policies as we evolve. So, Mr. President, I then want to bring attention to a difficult subject. We've spoken about the policy shifts. We've spoken about what other countries are doing. We've spoken about the importance of long-term care. We've spoken about the legislative reforms that are coming. We've spoken about the pillars on which the policy is built, Mr. President. But there is another reality that goes even further beyond us dumping our elderly in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. It is elder abuse. Elder abuse. This is something that I don't think that anybody in this honorable chamber takes lightly. The idea, Mr. President, and I think I remember seeing that video, and I'm not a huge, I don't see a lot of stuff that gets circulated, but because it was on the mainstream news, I saw this one. Just up the road, in front of Belmont Road, in front of the credit union, an elderly gentleman with a young, able-bodied man that all he has to do is get up and go and look and find some work and not try to take something that somebody else has worked for. And in this case, worse yet, an elder who had just come from the ATM at the credit union and taking this older man's things, what did not belong to him. But unfortunately, Mr. President, we're seeing more of that. We're seeing too much of that. We're seeing older persons having their jewelry that they've had for however long snatched from them, their bags and their purses snatched from them. These are problems, Mr. President, that we cannot ignore. And so the strengthened protections that are expected to come will include updated legislation, better enforcement, clearer reporting channels, the regulation of long-term care, because sometimes, and I've seen a case where, Mr. President, you have relatives who come, they have an older relative who is experiencing early onset Alzheimer's or early onset dementia. They get power of attorney signed over to them, and before you know it, their dependents, their children are cut out of their lives, taken to long-term care facilities, no access by their children and their loved ones, and some relative has just come in and taken over this person's life simply because they're suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia, and they're not necessarily in their clear state of mind. That also, Mr. President, is elder abuse. We also have been speaking about emotional and practical care for caregivers, and when I spoke about that category of person who may not know where to go for help and may really be struggling, The idea, Mr. President, that there are persons who care for their loved ones. I have seen people say to me, I've heard people say to me, caring for my father or my mother who has Alzheimer's or dementia in particular, who does not even remember from day to day who I am, is one of the most painful experiences of my life. We must never forget that caregivers in many instances need support too. And this policy prioritizes the importance of looking after caregivers so that in the provision of support to their elder members of their families, they too are given support. So as we move more and more into a Barbados where our Barbadians are living into their 70s, their 80s, their 90s. We have centenarians that every time we turn around, we see the president toasting them, and they give us all of these anecdotes on longevity and what we need to do. This policy recognizes what needs to happen for them. The policy recognizes the importance of strengthening community geriatric services, providing home and respite care, expanding the preventative health care systems, training for professionals in gerontology, and the integration of the social and healthcare systems. And then, Mr. President, in the built infrastructure, it has a dedicated section also on that. What does Barbados's built infrastructure need to look like to support our aging population? The policy therefore calls for accessible public buildings, safe sidewalks and crosswalks, reliable and senior-friendly transportation, age-friendly housing developments. What was it, Mr. President, the Golden Girls? You remember watching the Golden Girls, where these ladies lived their best lives and they were living in a retirement facility with all their friends and they were able to have all their social activities, but their houses were designed for them to cater to their needs at that age and stage. Retrofitting grants and support. So if you have a home and you want to be able, after you get 17, 18, 19, there should be a provision for you. You're not working. What would be the provision, what would be the support mechanism that would allow you to retrofit your house? You may need a ramp because you had stairs before. How do you have access to those resources, Mr. President? And I've already mentioned about the importance of community hubs that promote interaction. I spoke earlier, Mr. President, about where Barbados is also innovating in this policy, and it is specifically also going to come into the pandemics and disaster preparedness section of the policy. The policy integrates older persons into disaster planning through about 4 specific areas. 1, special evacuation protocols. It takes longer to move older persons than it may take someone who can run quickly and make all of the arrangements on their own, but you may need to start evacuating older persons first. The policy allows for that. It allows for provisions for access to medication. You can't have, and I've seen even in Jamaica, persons calling for medication, people who are struggling because the climate event has happened, the hurricane has passed, they're in a shelter, but they no longer have access to the medication, especially in a country that is grappling with non-communicable diseases. How do we make sure that they have adequate supplies of medication until such time as they're past the immediate worst of the danger? Identification of isolated seniors. Where do we find the people in our communities? Do we know the people in our communities who live alone, whose children are overseas, whose children come and visit, but they don't have anybody here with them on a day-to-day basis, except maybe the sister from the church who comes and visits with the shut-ins group? How do we identify those isolated seniors? That is captured in the policy, and then to have a community-based emergency response. You will never know as an outsider what a community knows as an insider about the people who live in a close-knit community. So how do we work with communities and community leaders to be able to identify seniors in need of support? This is critical, Mr. President. This is critical for a country and for a region that is prone to natural disasters. But then, Mr. President, then we have this intergenerational conversation, and it is captured in the policy. How do we bring our youth into the conversation? How do we raise a generation of youth that, like us, call their elders auntie or uncle or Miss Lisa or Mr. Chris? They give a level of respect even in the way in which they refer to them. How do we get that culture back in Barbados? And so the policy aims to help our youth to build empathy, participate in community service, innovate in the silver economy, support digital inclusion, learn from seniors as mentors, work in care, health, wellness, and the technology sectors, and effectively support a generation that then in turn supports each other, youth and our elderly supporting each other in a mutually reinforcing relationship, not standing apart. And we want to be able to build that Barbados. Now, the silver economy that I mentioned earlier is valued globally at over 15 trillion with a T dollars. For Barbados, there are opportunities in a couple of areas, and I pulled these out obviously as Minister with responsibility for business, wellness and rehabilitation services, assistive and smart home technologies, accessible tourism, senior entrepreneurship, housing retrofits. I just mentioned that if we need to be able to change our houses and how we equip our bathrooms and our stairwells and our steps and our entrance points, how do we have an economy that supports that? Financial products for retirees. They may not have a salary or an income, but they may have assets. How do we provide financial services for them? The creative and cultural heritage industries. You can't know the creative and cultural heritage better than them because they have lived it. Home and community care markets. Other persons, Mr. President, we are seeing representing economic potential, not for theft, not for plundering, not for elder abuse, Mr. President, and not to be seen as an economic burden, but really to build a silver economy that includes them. So here's where the work begins, Mr. President. To deliver this vision, the policy will require a few things: strong governance and coordination, annual implementation plans, dedicated budgetary allocations, data, research, and monitoring frameworks, public and private sector partnerships. The government cannot do this alone. This must be a whole of country approach. Legislative follow-through, national awareness, and cultural change. And this honorable chamber, as we bring different pieces of legislation and as we address different policies overall, and as we head into the budgets and the estimates of expenditure for 2026, this chamber has a critical role to play in overseeing this change. So ultimately, Mr. President, this policy is about what kind of society we choose to be. It is about a Barbados where older persons must not be allowed to feel invisible. It is about a Barbados where they must instead feel valued, respected, and protected. And then in closing, Mr. President, it sends a message to every older Barbadian. You mattered then, you matter now, and you will matter to Barbados for all the years ahead. And with these few words, Mr. President, I beg to move that this resolution do not pass.
Any other speakers at this time? Senator Cummings.
Mr. President, I beg to move that we suspend further deliberation of this item until a date to be determined.
The question is that further consideration of this resolution be postponed. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it. We will therefore return to this at a date to be chosen by the leader of government business. Further consideration is therefore postponed. Senator Cummings.
Mr. President, I beg to move that, having come to the end of government's business for today, that this sitting be adjourned. I beg to move, Mr. President, that this sitting of the Senate be suspended for lunch to resume in 1 hour at 1:30 p.m.
The question is that this sitting of the Senate be suspended until 1:30 p.m. today. Will those honorable senators in favor please say aye? Those against please say no. Thanks, the ayes have it. The Senate is suspended until 1:30 p.m. today.